Hey, welcome to episode 141 of Awkwardly Awesome Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Freeman, and as always, I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're talking about a bunch of glorious things. Italy, the wonder of food, the wonder of creating a dream, a wonder of good restaurants. I am so excited about this conversation. But first, this.
Today's guest, Riccardo Tarabelsi.
Let me tell you about this amazing man, Riccardo Tarabelsi. I've known Riccardo since he was part of the wonderful wait staff at Spezias, which was just an amazing Italian restaurant in Sioux Falls that and then sadly closed its doors a few years ago. What I didn't realize is that during his time at Spezias, Riccardo was secretly nurturing a dream to one day open an Italian restaurant of his own. Many dreams, as we know, get lost and forgotten in the reality of day-to-day life, but not for Riccardo. He explains his amazing journey this way. I was born in Florence, Italy, immigrated to the U.S. when I was 5, and grew up in Boston where I attended Tufts University. I met my future wife in Medford, Massachusetts. She happened to be a Sioux Falls girl. Surprise, surprise. Guess who's moving to the Midwest, Riccardo. We got married and decided to move to Sioux Falls, start a family, and lay the foundation for our dreams. Fast forward 24 years, we have 3 college-age boys, 3 dogs, 3 restaurants, and a catering company. Please welcome to Awkwardly Awesome Podcast, Riccardo.
Hey, Jason.
Hey, thanks for being here, Riccardo.
It's my pleasure.
I'm kind of starstruck at the moment. I hope I can keep it together.
I am too. I didn't know how high tech this was. This is awesome.
well, we try here. So I like starting when talking about when my guests are kids. When you were 5 years old, a big thing happened in your life. Could you please talk about that?
Sure. Yeah, I was, well, like you said, I was born in Florence, Italy. And all of a sudden, the story goes back further, and you kind of have to know the backdrop. So my dad was actually from Syria. And so when he turned 18, his family, and he's the oldest of 4 boys, his family fled Syria. They went to Kuwait, which was kind of a neutral area at the time. And then they all kind of went their separate ways across the world, which is, I've got the handy dandy world map behind me because, I mean, I have relatives all over the world.
Wow.
This is back in the 50s. And so they left, and my dad chose to go to Italy. He just had this dream of living there and absorbing the culture. And so he spent 13 years in Italy. Meanwhile, one of my uncles went to France, and the other 2, the youngest boys, moved to the United States, to the Boston area with my grandparents. And so my dad spent.
So how did the other sons choose where they wanted to go?
I think it was just kind of, where do you want to go, you know? And for my dad, it was he had something drew him to Italy. He didn't know that he was going to meet my his future wife and my future mom in Florence, and that's where he ended up going. And he was one of those. If you've ever been to Florence, for your viewers, in the center, in the kind of the centro is what it's called, the center part of Florence, there's all these little vendors with little carts, and they sell leather purses and leather belts and little statues of David. And that's what he did. He was one of those little salespeople, merch people. And he was extremely successful there because he was fluent in so many languages. He knew every dialect of Arabic. He knew French, Italian, Spanish. He could pretty much get along with and talk in a tourist's native language, and then just built that trust. And that's something I learned from him a long, long time ago.
Had he been studying languages in Syria?
He had, yes. Yeah, he actually went to a French private school, so he was fluent in French.
Well, interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting background.
Continue.
Yeah, so then of course
your dad is speaking all these languages.
Yeah,
successful because he speaks so many languages.
Yeah, so my the story of how my parents met, they met in a bar, and the reason why my mom's interest was piqued by my dad is because he was there with all his buddies, and everyone's drinking wine and whiskey and what else, and he ordered a glass of milk at a bar. I know. And so they started talking. Anyway, one thing leads to another. They get married. They have me. And then 5 years later, I'm 5 years old. And all this time, and think about the time period. This is early 70s when I was born. And he kept in touch with his family, via airmail, writing letters, sending letters, no internet, of course, no Facebook. And they kept in touch all these years. And his parents said, you need to move your family to America. This is the land of opportunity. We've started a business. They're all mechanics. And so they had already bought a gas station, and they were fixing imported cars, there was a demand for that because a lot of mechanics in the U.S. at the time weren't working on imports. They were working on American cars. So my dad said, all right, we're picking up and we're moving. And the funny part is it wasn't just my mom and me. My mom's mom, so my little, if you can picture her, she's about this tall, little Italian grandmother said, well, I'm coming with you. And she didn't speak a word of English. My mom didn't speak any English. My dad had learned English over the years just through meeting American tourists. And so, we moved.
And did you learn any English?
I didn't know any English. Yeah. So we moved. I was 5 years old. They put me in preschool. And this is in Boston. So think about this. And I thank my nursery school teacher forever that she did not have a thick Boston accent when she taught me, or else there's no way I could shake a Boston accent. She taught me proper English, and of course, just being around in the environment, every once in a while I drop an R off of the end of a word, but that only happens when I'm having a couple sips of wine. I learned English in about a year. My mom learned it along the way. My grandmother learned as much English as she could from watching soap operas during the day. And my dad was working at the gas station with his brothers and his dad. And they were the first example of an entrepreneur I'd ever seen, even though I had no idea that's what I was witnessing.
As a 5-year-old, was it overwhelming to you to be learning a new language, or did you barely think about it?
I don't know that it really bothered me, and I've always had an affinity for languages. I picked up French pretty quickly and pretty fluent in French. I even took it in college, literature courses. Spanish I can kind of get by. The Romance languages are pretty, very similar. Other than that, no, I don't really have much of a memory that it was very hard. And that's where, and it's funny, and I meet people from Italy, not all the time, but sometimes people from Italy do come to visit Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And of course, we start talking because they come to the restaurant and they love the restaurant, which is the biggest compliment we could ever get. Someone from Italy coming to Sioux Falls, eating at one of our Italian restaurants and giving us high praise. And but I'll start talking to them in Italian. I'm still fluent. And
wow.
And they say the same thing to me every time. It's like you never left. Like I don't have an accent in Italian. I still sound like I'm from Florence, Italy. And in English, I don't have an accent. And it's I don't know. I grew up very bilingually in the fact that at home we only spoke Italian, and that's the only reason why I'm still fluent to this day.
Even in Boston, you only spoke Italian at home.
And at home, correct. Yep. And then at school, it was only English. So I really kind of grew up learning both languages.
Your love of languages was nurtured very young. How about your love of food? How did that was that part of your childhood too?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, with especially since my grandmother was living with us and my mom, so an Italian mother and an Italian grandmother, and they're just they cook. That's what they did all day. There was always something simmering or braising or boiling or baking there's always something going on. Every one of my friends always wanted to come to my house because it smelled the best. I mean, it always smelled good. And we always sat down for family dinner. My dad would get off at 6 p.m. every night, and we'd sit down for dinner, and it was always beautiful. I have memories. There's always a bottle of Rufino Chianti on the table. And then for after dinner, for some reason, my dad always had a bottle of Beck's beer. I don't know why. It was just refreshing, maybe a palate cleanser. But yeah, I was around really, really good food and good cooking my entire childhood.
So what did sitting down for the evening meal mean to you as a kid?
To me, it was normal. It wasn't until I started meeting, in high school and college and beyond, meeting people that were like, wait, they'd come over, we'd sit down for a family dinner, and they're like, this is what you do? And I'm like, isn't this what you do? So yeah, for me, it was very normal, but it also taught me that, excuse me, to try to make sure that when I had a family of my own, that we spent these moments together. And so we try to do that as much as possible when the kids were young. Of course, we're going to talk about my life in restaurants, and restaurants are not conducive to a family meal in the evening. And so
Ironically, because restaurants are serving a ton of food in the evening. This
right,
is ironic.
for others, it is ironic. But my wife, I mean, 100% of the credit goes to her. She did everything she could when the kids were young, where she would adjust their bedtime at night so they go to bed earlier and wake up early, so that we had morning times together. And so our quality times were always in the mornings and early afternoons before I had to go into the restaurant. So a huge credit to her for kind of creating those moments.
Do you have big breakfasts in your house?
We used to, not anymore.
But when you used to, used to be?
Oh, when the kids were young, yeah, it was, chocolate chip pancakes, eggs, bacon, sausage, you name it.
And
good
you
American breakfast.
Once invited me. Gosh.
I'm sorry.
So as you got into high school, did you know you wanted to work in the restaurant industry at that point?
No, not at all.
What did you want to do?
Well, I was really good at math and science. I played soccer. I was involved in sports and band. I mean, I was very well rounded, with, again, a credit to my upbringing. But because I was strong in math and science, and I had taken I just forgot this. So the reason I went to Tufts University, which is just outside of Boston, I took a creative writing course the summer after my junior year in high school. I know.
Wow.
I know. And it's because I was such a math and science kid, and English, my English classes, I did well freshman and sophomore year, but the junior year, it got really hard for me for some reason. And I still remember this meeting with the teacher and my parents, and she said, he needs to take an extra class. And she recommended going to Tufts for this creative writing course that's going to help him formulate his thoughts, because he has good thoughts. He just can't write them down. And I don't know if that's my brain with the bilingually, all that. The irony is that I write a monthly wine article in a local magazine, and it's for the last 20 years I've been writing. So I do a lot of writing. So thankfully I was enrolled in that course. I went to Tufts University as a junior in high school for a summer course. And I fell in love with the campus. The professor was amazing. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about myself. And I said to myself, this is where I want to go to college. And so I applied early decision, and I was accepted at Tufts by, I think it was November or December of my senior year. And I just coasted the rest of senior year because I knew I had already gotten accepted, and was going to
That must have been really nice.
yeah, I was going to go to my dream school. And then I decided to be it was going to be a pre-med major. So I took a bunch of biology, chemistry, organic chemistry, you name it, classes to build up my resume and take the MCATs and apply to med school. Like I had my whole life planned out.
So how did you actually take the MCATs?
Oh yeah, I did. I think I got a decent score. I just remember when I went for interviews for medical school, everybody, and again, this is early 90s, where everybody wanted to go to med school. Everyone wanted to be a doctor. And every interview I went to, they all said the same thing. You know, we already have a lot of Tufts applicants. And so at that time, it was a lot about, for these med schools, the impression I got was they wanted a diverse group of med students, not just kind of filtering them in from Tufts. And of course, I applied to Tufts Medical, and BU, and a bunch of schools in New England. But I applied for 3 years after graduating from Tufts.
3 years. We have to celebrate this for a sec. Because applying to med school for first you did all the prerequisites. You did organic chemistry, and you majored in what?
Psychology.
And so you did all that. You did the MCAT, then you applied not once, but 3 times.
Yes.
Is that an easy thing to do?
No, it's very difficult. And it's difficult to hear no, or to get that rejection letter. But after 3 years, I was like, obviously this is not happening.
What made you go back, like not only twice, but 3 times to try?
Part of it was, it's what I was supposed to do. You know, my family, culturally speaking, they all want, this is not only what I'm the oldest in my family, I'm the oldest boy. I have 2 younger sisters. I'm the oldest on my dad's side, meaning I'm the oldest of all the cousins, of all the grandkids. And they all expected me to, he's going to become a doctor. And that was part of the reason why I kept applying. I even did a year of a post-baccalaureate program at Harvard, just to, again, boost my resume, boost what I'm doing.
Okay, we need to celebrate that. What was the subject of this post-baccalaureate?
It was neurobiology, of all things. I know your dad doesn't even know this.
And 2 side notes real quick. One, if anyone has a comment or question, please, I have more than enough to ask this man, but if you do, please chime in. And then the other thing I keep coming back to as I talk to you is we've known each other for 20 years, and I've never known much about your life. Your life is simply phenomenal.
Oh, it's nice to be. Thank you.
So you even did a post what at Harvard?
Post baccalaureate. Yep, at Harvard. Figuring.
And no what?
What's that in the subject matter?
Yeah.
It was neurobiology.
That can't be easy.
No, it was lovely. I learned a lot, and I'm like, this is going to get me over the top. And even that wasn't enough to get me into med school at that time. This is the 94, 95, 96. That's when I applied. And let's go back. At that time, I was dating my future wife, who I had met in Boston, a Sioux Falls girl.
Okay. We need to back up real quick.
Back up a little bit. Yeah.
Please tell the story of how you met.
So my wife, Mary Beth, she was born in Sioux Falls, raised here, and at age 18, she decided right out of high school that she knew that there had to be something more than just South Dakota. And she was one of those
I
people.
mean, that's impossible, but maybe.
Well, and she kind of saw her whole life lay before her. She was working as a bank teller at one of the local banks,
Mm.
and they kind of gave her the whole fast track. Hey, you do this for a year, then you become a teller manager, then a branch manager, then a this, then this, that. And she was like, no, there's got to be something more to life than this. And her calling was nursing. She became an RN. But before that, so her best friend in high school, she had picked up and moved out to Boston, and she was a nanny for a family in Boston. And this family had family friends that were also looking for a nanny, and they're like, "Your nanny is amazing. Where do you find a girl like that?" And they said, "South Dakota. That's where you find them." And so her friend called my wife and said, "You've got to move out to Boston. How great would that be? We could, be near each other and have this great nannying job for these families. They pay well. It's all that kind of stuff. And this is the adventure you're looking for." And so my wife said yes. So age 18, she moved out all by herself to Boston, worked for this family for about a year, and then she put herself through nursing school at Somerville School of Nursing.
Well, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we met in, let's see, 92 or 93. So I was still in college. She was in nursing school. And talk about why you meet certain people in your life. My thought process was, all right, I need a job because I need to make some money. But it has to be a job that I want to get it done in the morning before classes start. So what kind of job can I get in the morning before classes start at 8:30?
Dunkin' Donuts?
Yeah, I should have. I love Dunkin' Donuts. I wish we had one in Sioux Falls. And if no one does it, I just might. Okay. So, and then my wife, who don't know her yet, she's in nursing school, and she's like, what job can I get that I can get done before classes start in the morning? So we both show up at this local hospital, and we worked as phlebotomists. You know what a phlebotomist is?
You draw blood.
Yeah. So we worked in the lab, and we every morning we get this huge list because many patients need fasting, blood sugar, or so overnight they're fasting. We go in early in the morning at 6:30. We draw their blood. We bring all the test tubes back to the lab, and then we're at the door to class. So I remember showing up and meeting her, and they said, "Hey, you're going to be assigned to work every morning with Mary Beth. Mary Beth, you're working every morning with Riccardo." And I said, "Oh, hey, I'm Riccardo. What's your name?" She goes, "Oh, I'm Mary Beth. I have a boyfriend."
What?
First words she ever said to me. And I said, "Okay, I like this girl." Yeah. So anyway, so we were best friends for, over 2 years. We used to go on double dates she would go with her boyfriend. I'd have a girlfriend. We'd go together. And the whole time throughout our entire friendship, we would describe what our perfect, person or soulmate was. And we were describing each other to each other. And it was just a matter of timing. And lucky for me, it worked out.
So you would describe your vision of a soulmate to each other, and eventually you realize that you were describing each other.
She was it, and I was it for her. Yeah. It's kind of a Hallmark love story, and whatever. It's fine.
And for you, a Hallmark love story that includes Sioux Falls, South Dakota, not Boston, not Florence, Italy, not Syria, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. What was that like the first time you came to Sioux Falls?
Yeah, so we were dating. I remember my very first trip to Sioux Falls was for Christmas, and so I flew out and I flew into Omaha because flights were cheaper, and my future father-in-law and my future wife, picked me up in Omaha, and I met him, and we get into his Ford F-150 pickup truck, and we drove for 3 hours straight, and surrounded by fields of just white snow. And I thought, this is where I die. Like, this is the end. And so that was my first impression, but that was, driving from Omaha to Sioux Falls. Anyway, Sioux Falls, every time I came to visit, I just loved it more and more. The open spaces were the first thing that kind of freaked me out a little bit, just to be able to see as far as you can see the horizon, which is something in Boston, you can only see the next building. There aren't, obviously, if you get outside of Boston into the country, you can, but I grew up just outside of Boston. It was very, almost, when I go back to visit, it feels claustrophobic because I'm so used to the open spaces here in Sioux Falls. But no, I love Sioux Falls. I didn't know eventually we would move here, but I knew it was a place that I could live. So yeah, I'd come to visit a bunch of times. We got married here in Sioux Falls. My whole family came out because they wanted to see the Wild West. They made a whole trip of it. They went to the Black Hills and did the Mount Rushmore thing, and then came back for the wedding.
So it was an adventure for them to see the Wild West.
It was, yeah. Yeah, I mean, people from the East Coast think it's covered wagons out here. They're pleasantly surprised. Yeah. So yeah, no, we got married in 1997. We then moved right after that. We moved to Houston, Texas, and we lived in Texas for 2 years. And this is after. So in the meantime, I'm applying to med school. Decided I've got to do something else, and so we moved to Houston, Texas, where I worked at the Texas Medical Center in this. It was called TBI, traumatic brain injury.
Oh, wow. Really? Wow.
Unit. And so I was doing testing on it was all kids. So it was kids from, I forget, like 4 to 16. We had all these parameters. So I was contributing to these research papers at these PhDs that I was working for. And so the thought was, well, maybe I'll go to grad school and just get a PhD. And after, doing that and living in Texas for 2 years, and we had just been married for 2 years, we started thinking, okay, should we start a family? And the very first thing I said was, we're not raising kids in Houston, Texas. We can't.
What took you to Houston? And Jenny Gold says, well, Riccardo, you are a go-getter. That's
that's nice. Thank you.
Yes. Well, what took you to Houston? Out of all the places in the United States, what took you to Houston?
Sure. A couple different things. One was obviously the opportunity to work in this research study. The other is, more importantly, is family. One of my wife's sisters had lived there for years and years, had kids, and so we were close to family, which made it less daunting to just kind of go to a new city.
After 2 years, you're like, we're not raising kids.
Yeah, I mean, Houston. I don't know if you've ever been to Houston. It's just, it's ginormous. It's 5 million people. It's hot. There's traffic. I mean, I commuted from where we lived to downtown, which is where the medical center was. On a weekend, I could get there in 20 minutes. During the week, during the rush hour, it was an hour and a half commute each way. And I started thinking, I have 3 hours out of every single one of my days. I'm just sitting in a car.
So you move back to Sioux Falls, and then how does Spezias come into your life?
Sure. Well, I was going to say so there was another big reason we wanted to move to Sioux Falls. My wife has another sister that lives here in Sioux Falls, and she had a baby. And for some reason, and Mary Beth was a charge nurse at a clinic down in Houston. She didn't take the time off to, come here to see the newborn. And she was just in tears the whole time. And I said, Mary Beth, why don't we just move there? She's like, what? Would you ever move there? And I'm like, yeah, let's move to Sioux Falls. And so and it's just full circle. We attribute. So the baby that was born, his name is Hank. And we've been here 24. So he's turning 24 this year. He's our manager at Brick's Wine Bar, which is one of our wine bars in downtown Sioux Falls.
Oh my gosh.
I know. It's just, and he, So Mary Beth says to people all the time, he's the reason we moved here. So yeah, that was 24 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. So we move here. This is a fun story. We move here. I have a background in psychology, traumatic brain injury research. I'm like, what job can I get here to figure out what the next step is? And so Sioux Valley, well, now it's Sanford, but Sioux Valley at the time, had a psychiatry department. And so I went and I applied and I became a mental health counselor. And so I was doing group therapy for kids, adolescents, adults, and then eventually geriatric psychiatry, which was very, very challenging, but rewarding at the same time. And what happened was, I'm there working full time, 5 days a week, and Sioux Valley sends a memo out, and they say, from now on, if you're a tech or lab or mental health counselor, doesn't matter what position you're in the hospital, everyone's going to go to 12-hour shifts. And so now I went from working 5 days a week to working 3 days a week. And I still got paid full time and full time benefits, which is great. But now I had 4 days off a week. And on top of that, my wife had just become pregnant, and she was an RN on pediatrics at Sioux Valley, and she had to be put on bed rest. And I'm like, I need to get another job. And she said, that'd be great. So I said, what should I do? And she goes, well, what about that Italian restaurant, Spezia? And I said, I don't know anything about restaurants. I've never worked in a restaurant. And she goes, but you're Italian. I said, that's not a prerequisite. So anyway, so I listened to her. I went to Spezia, walked in, met the manager, and he said, you're Italian? And I said, yeah. And he goes, you're hired. And I'm like, what's with you? I don't know anything. And he goes, we'll teach you everything. And so, yeah, I got a part-time job waiting tables at Spezia on the weekends. At the beginning part of the week, I was at Sioux Valley. And I got to the point where I dreaded going to the hospital and going to that job. And I couldn't wait to get to the restaurant. It was the energy and the adrenaline and the people. And I just fell in love with hospitality, and I was good at it. So a manager position came open. Thanks to a friend of mine, still friends with him. His name is Aaron. He was offered the general manager position at Minerva's at the time. So that left an opening. And so I went to the manager and I said, what about me? And he goes, wait, you're interested? And I said, I think I'm ready to do this full time. And
how long had you been at Spezias at that point?
I don't think even a year. I wasn't not even a year, maybe 9 months.
Wow.
But you have to think about, I was 27, 28 back then. The majority of the servers are 21 to 23. So I had this maturity about me, and they jumped at the chance to have me be a manager at Spezia, and so did I. And I left healthcare forever way back then. So I was the manager there for 4 years at Spezia.
So Jenny Go says, remember driving from airports to Aberdeen, South Dakota, and I thought the little water closest looking building were secret elevators going down to nuclear bomb silos. It was 1986.
That's
an
funny.
Awesome memory, Jason.
Yeah.
I'm Jason. Yeah. It's an awesome memory, Jenny Go. Thanks for sharing. So you just got into this whole new field, and you found you loved the pace, and you loved the adrenaline, and you loved it. So you became a manager in 9 months. Wow.
Mm-hmm. I did.
So how did you go from being a manager in your head to being like, hey, I want to open my own restaurants?
It started. The idea for these restaurants that we have started 20 years ago when I was at my first restaurant job, and I would have ideas, a different way of doing things. And so when you're in a manager position and you go to the owners, because they're going to say yes or no, I would go to them with ideas, and some were implemented, but most of them were no. That's and one owner even went so far to say to me, hey, when you have your own restaurant, you can do whatever you want. And that stuck with me, Jason, for over 20 years. Stuck with me. And there was a lot of formulating just abstract thoughts, nothing written down on paper or anything, but it was something that I could see what an ideal restaurant in my mind looked like and felt like and sounded like and tasted like. And so, yeah, that I just held on to it for all these years.
So as human beings, we love to dream and we're good at having abstract thoughts and coming up with ideas. How did you begin to turn your ideas, which you found exciting, into actual businesses?
Sure. Well, so just the timeline. So after Spezia, I became a wine sales rep for a couple of years, where I got really serious about wine. And then I was recruited by Westford Hill Country Club. I became the GM there for about 6 years. Learned a lot about business and how to manage a very big facility. Then I actually went back to Spezia. I don't know if you remember this. I went after they moved down to Louise.
What?
Yeah, I worked there for just about a year
No.
because I'd kept in touch with the owners over the years, and they reached out and they said they needed some help, and so I was the GM there for about a year. And then I got a call from Vance Thompson saying that his son was going to brewing school at UC Davis in California and wanted to open a brewery in Sioux Falls. And I said, "Why are you calling me?" I said, at this point I've kind of become known for wine knowledge, and I was, the wine guy. And he said, his son has never owned a business before, but with my maturity and reputation and kind of the networking that I do, and he thought maybe we could talk and see if there was something there. And so, of course, I met Blake, and we hit it off immediately, like brothers from another mother. And so I joined Fernson Brewing Company before the warehouse was even had fermenters in the tank, or in the tanks in the building. And so I helped them with sales and marketing, kind of grew that, a brewery that no one had ever heard before was now in 5 states of distribution. I was there for the first 4 years of the business. And I really have to thank them, because just being a part of that startup and, being part of decisions like, what should the cans look like? What should the content say? What are we doing on social media? Tracking sales and forecasting, and there's so many different things. And I was like, why am I not doing this for myself and my family? And that's really when the gears started turning, and I started putting things on paper that I've been thinking about for 20 years. And then the opportunity came up for us to look at space for this wine bar concept that we had come up with. And so luckily we looked at a couple different places downtown. We knew we wanted to be downtown because downtown has such rich history. And this is before downtown was like super busy. Like now it's so vibrant. And this is over 5 years ago. And Prairieberry had moved out of their space on 8th Street. And it's this old quartzite building. It's built in 1900. It's got this old world vibe to it. And of course that matches kind of our persona. And so we went down, looked at it, and we were like, this is it. This is where we're going to do the wine bar. So we negotiated a lease and opened in October of 2018.
Did you have any food at first at the wine bar?
When we first opened our wine bar, we had a very, very small, limited menu. We had like 2 salads. I don't think we had any appetizers. We had 2 charcuterie boards. And then we had 4 panini, and that was it. I mean, very limited. And so people would come out and enjoy, because I was doing a lot of wine education. I was doing free wine tastings on Tuesdays and, educational tastings, and people were coming for that. But I started noticing a pattern. People would come in, they'd order an appetizer and a glass of wine, and then they'd say, "Hey, can you give me my ticket? Because we have to make our reservation time at Parker's, Minerva's, Ode, wherever they were going next."
And you're like, hey, holy cow, what's walking out the door here?
Right. And so we were just becoming a stop in someone's evening, but not the stop. And so, and I knew that food would be the answer. If we expand the menu even just a little bit, if we give people different reasons for coming, So yeah, so we started expanding the menu just little by little. And then we started doing live music. So we've been doing live jazz every Thursday since November of 2018. So we're going on 5 years of every single Thursday live jazz. And then a few months later, we started Saturday night music. And then a couple of years later, we started doing Friday night music. So now every single week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, there's always live music at our wine bar. The occasional Wednesday, the occasional Tuesday as well.
Well, what made you think initially of doing live music?
Just another reason for people to come see us. Anything I could do to draw people in, to have them find out who we were. And because once we had them there, then it was just, then we just do our thing. We hopefully you feel this way. We make people feel warm and welcome and like they're part of the family. And of course, we've always had a lot of family members that work for us and work with us. And that just adds to the authenticity of this is a family owned, family operated restaurant.
So speaking of family, how has your wife been instrumental in creating this vision?
I mean, she's the only reason why I am who I am. She's the only reason why I even got in the restaurant business in the first place. She's been my supporter the entire time. Not only that, but raising three great boys. We have three sons. They're all, well, one just graduated from college. We have two still in college. They all work for us as well. And she's behind the scenes a lot of the times. She's also our HR person. So if anyone has anything for HR, she's the one that we get involved. And you've met her. She's very direct. She deals with things head on, and it's a tribute to all of our restaurants that if there's any kind of drama, it gets dealt with right away, and it doesn't fester. It doesn't go anywhere because my wife is on it. She's incredible at it. I'm a little more finesse and let's talk about feelings. And she's like, no, this is right. This is wrong. And this is how we're dealing with it. And people appreciate that about her. And she's our rock. Not to mention, by the way, because I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, in the early days when when you open a restaurant, man, there's a lot of balls in the air and the sales aren't there right away. You're new, you're trying to, how much money do you spend on marketing? Do you hope that word of mouth is kind of your marketing and that's free? And you hope that Facebook posts work because most of those are free. And so you try to save money as much as possible. And my wife worked in the dish room doing dishes for the first 2 years we were open. Actually, a little over 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Just to save on labor.
Wow.
And well, you say, wow. It was actually a means to an end. That's her comfort zone. She loves cleaning. And so she's down there doing dishes. And so a lot of times I'd run, because the dish room is downstairs from the wine bar, and I'd run downstairs. I'd be like, hey, there's, the Freemans are here. You got to come say hi. And, she'd be wet and it's steamy and she's doing dishes. She's like, no, I'll be up later. So she'd make the time to come up and visit with guests as well. But people don't really realize how much she did behind the scenes, especially in those first few years of our business.
So I get all some of the elements of a restaurant, like a good menu, great wait staff, family, good ambiance, but putting it all together and creating, like I would say, a magical experience for your customers where they feel special, where they love the food, where they want to come back again and again and again and again. What's it like to put that all together and do something that consistently works?
It's pretty simple actually, because people ask me all the time. They're like, "What's your secret? What's your secret?" And I'm like, "There's no secret."
So, Riccardo, what's your secret?
There's no secret. It's being kind, and when I say kind, it's not necessarily be kind to the guests. It starts with our staff. Like we're known as extremely understanding, flexible, kind people to our staff, to our service staff, kitchen staff. Doesn't matter what position you're in, every position is as important as the other. We made a very conscious effort when we first opened our wine bar. I told my wife, I said, we need to treat every single employee that we'll ever have as irreplaceable. And
We
that
need to treat every employee we will ever have as irreplaceable.
right, meaning at past jobs I've had working for past owners, there would be some owners that would come in and literally say to someone, I can replace you tomorrow.
Oh,
This is back when the job market was really, people were knocking on everybody's doors. Everyone wanted to work. And it was kind of true that, yeah, he could replace a chef tomorrow. He could replace a busser, replace a manager. It was no problem. But to say that and everyone felt it, everyone felt like, man, I could be replaced tomorrow. And so I told my wife, I said, we're going to treat everyone as completely irreplaceable. And we would tell them that. They would come in and I'd say, you know what? There's no one like you. You're completely irreplaceable. And you think about it. Yes, could we replace a position? Of course. But we can't replace that person. Can't replace their personality, their smile, their attitude. We can't replace any of those things. And so we are very intentional about making sure everyone knows they're irreplaceable. And if you ask any one of my employees or our employees, they would tell you that. They would say, yeah, it's exactly how they make us feel. And if we make them feel like that, they're going to turn around when they're waiting on a table or making a dish. They're going to think, well, this guest is irreplaceable, and this dish has to be presented like it could never be remade. Everyone takes really good care of everybody, and it starts with us taking care of them.
So, something else you said, in so many businesses, there's a very distinct hierarchy, but you said someone working in the dish room is as important as someone waiting tables. Can you
Absolutely.
say more about that?
That's probably the hardest, one of the most valuable positions in the restaurant is the dish room. I mean, you don't have a dishwasher, and guess what? Plates aren't getting clean, silver's not getting clean, glasses aren't getting done. I mean, it's a tough position. So we treat the dishwasher just as important as we do our executive chef, our general manager, our server, our busboy, our bar back, bartenders. It doesn't matter. Yeah, everyone's treated like they're the most important position. And like I said, we give them this feeling of we could never replace you. And it's not that we've had zero turnover. People come and go, they leave, they move on. Luckily we have had really, really good people over the years as far as, having to fire anybody. And most people that have left, they've left for better opportunities or they move out of state or what have you. And we're in complete support of other people's dreams. And we've had servers come up to us and say, man, I would love to open my own wine bar someday. And we're like, what can we do to help you? Like, how can we get you there? And so I do a weekly wine training at both our wine bar and Marabella. We do continuing education. If someone wants to take the level 1 sommelier exam, we pay for it when they pass the exam. Like we're kind of building this team of wine experts in both restaurants, which it's really exciting for me because I love wine and I love sharing information about wine. And what I love is the way we do it, because a lot of people are afraid of wine because they see it as this kind of, snooty, highbrow, hard to understand thing. And I like to think that we kind of, we don't talk down to people. We talk with people and we simplify things and have them start growing an appreciation for wine.
So if someone's, let's say, wine curious, but doesn't know much at all, where will you start them?
A lot of times I'll ask them what they like in their coffee. It can give you a hint as to what kind of palate they have. If they say, oh, cream and 7 sugars, well, then obviously we're going to start with like a Moscato or Riesling, something that's a little more fruit forward and not so abrasive. If someone says, oh, I drink my coffee black, sometimes I add whiskey to it. Okay, well, then let's go to something bolder, maybe, a Cab or a Syrah or a Zinfandel. It really, everybody's path is different. But that's why we used to do free wine tastings every Tuesday, and I would just pick out 2 random bottles, and people just ate it up because they couldn't wait to see, ooh, what 2 bottles is he going to pick this week, and what's he going to tell me about it? And people would end up buying bottles to take home, stay for a glass of wine. Again, it was just one of those ways. How do I attract people and keep them here?
How did you fall in love with your wine journey? Briefly.
Gosh, I'm sure it started when I was a kid. I mean, growing up in Italy and then having wine at the dinner table every single night growing up, I was around it. I tasted it. But I think really that when I was a wine rep and, they sent me on a couple of trips to California, and when you're around that environment, you really just start growing that passion for it. But I started noticing that a lot of people in the field would describe wine just over everybody's heads. They're talking about malolactic fermentation and, French versus Slovenian oak, barrel aging, and people that are especially wine curious, that they don't want to know or need to know, or maybe someday want to ask those questions. They just want to know, how does it taste? How is it going to feel my palate? Is it going to pair with the food that's in front of me? I mean, it's like real, like we make it very real when we educate people about wine.
So much to talk about. How have your sons been instrumental to the restaurants you've created?
It's been one. I mean, we're blessed, and people tell me that all the time. They're like, "We can't believe your kids actually want to work with you." And I'm like, "We're blessed in that way." So Dante is our oldest. The second he turned 18 in high school, we said, "All right, we're going to train you to be a server." And so he was a server, really all through college. And now he graduated from South Dakota State with a mechanical engineering major and an aerospace engineering minor.
Wow.
He's working full time for us. I mean, how lucky are we? We have an engineer that has a passion for the hospitality business, and he's good at it. Last year when he was 21, he took his level 1 sommelier exam and passed. He helped us open Brick's Wine Bar those first 4 months. Sorry, I thought I lost you. Okay.
No.
The first 4 months we were in business at Brick's, he opened it, helped us put together the wine list. Anyway, so flash forward, he graduated. He's coming to work for us. He's working right now for us full time. The only reason I'm on this podcast is because he's at one of the restaurants covering for me, which is great. But his title, he's our director of wine. He's really passionate about it, gets it, knows how to talk to people about wine and get them interested in trying new wines and pairing them with food. So right now we're in the middle of revamping the wine list at Marabella. So great project for him that we're working on right now. Then our other son, or 2 other sons, we have Barrett, who is going into junior year at University of Sioux Falls. So he still lives in Sioux Falls. And again, when he turned 18, we trained him as a server. He's been waiting tables ever since. He's been helping us more with wine club because we started a wine club. 4 years ago. We have 260 members where we pick out.
You said 260 members.
Yeah, it's all local because you have to come into the restaurant to pick it up. We can't ship it. But we pick out 2 bottles of wine every month. I write little tasting notes on each of the wines. It comes in this cute little bag. So he helps us with that. And he's a business major at USF, and he's basically told us he intends to work for us. He wants to work for the family business when he graduates. And that's only 2 years away. And then our youngest, when he turned 18, and he's going to be a sophomore at University of Sioux Falls. But when he turned 18, I said, "All right, Jackson, just like your brothers, we're going to train you to be a server." He goes, "Yeah, I don't like people." I said, "Okay, we're going to put you in the kitchen." And so we put him in the kitchen, and this kid is thriving. He's great. He's wonderful saute cook. He knows every position at our wine bar, loves the team back there. And from a business perspective, how great it is that we have a son that wants to work in the back of the house and two that want to work in the front of the house. It's fantastic. Now, Jackson, I mean, he's only 19. I don't know what his future holds. He's a computer science / math major. So he wants to do something with computers in the future. So we'll see. He might be our IT guy. I don't know. We'll see.
Wonderful. What a wonderful family.
Thank you.
Speaking of your family, one of your brilliant servers told me to ask you who's your favorite footballer?
Footballer?
Yeah.
Like soccer?
Yeah. I'm trying to say the word.
No, that's okay. My favorite soccer player ever?
Yeah.
Gosh, that's a tough one. I mean, I grew up in the era of Diego Maradona from Argentina was fantastic. Gosh, Maldini from Italy. Yeah, I don't know if you noticed in the bar area of Maribella, we have two soccer jerseys that are framed. One is from the national Italian team, and the other one is from Fiorentina, which is my hometown, Florence. It's the club team from there.
Wow.
Yeah, just personal touches around the restaurant, you know.
Speaking of that, what do you love about Italian sports cars?
What do I like about Italian sports cars?
Yeah.
Uh,
Because
they're
you have some.
they're perfect. What else? There's no argument. They're absolutely beautiful. And I know people watching this are going to say, well, German cars and other. Uh, it's funny. I drive German cars, but those I mean, Ferrari and Maserati. There's just something really fashionable about them. Just like men's, well, and women's fashion in Italy, I think just matches the cars.
Hmm. So I ask all my guests this. I am talking my business about the power of doing our imperfect best, and what it means to me is that that I envision the best I want for my life and the people around me, and when mistakes happen, instead of using them as a reason to quit, I try and learn from them and move forward. What does doing your imperfect best mean to you, Riccardo?
I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I've made lots of mistakes over the years. And I don't need to get. We had investors lined up for the original R Wine Bar that fell through at the last minute, and I thought it was the end of the world. And I remember calling a friend, and I said, "I feel like I just took a bullet." And he said, "I know it feels like that right now, but when you look back on this moment, you're going to feel like you dodged a bullet." And was he right? I mean, he couldn't have been more right. So I think a lot of times things happen to us or failures happen or mistakes happen. And in that moment, you think this is the worst case scenario that can't get any worse. And looking back on my life, I think, but I'm glad those moments happened because it led me to a better moment.
I'm glad those moments happened because it led me to a better moment. Wow. My last few questions. What did so you had created Maribel during the pandemic, right?
Well, so our wine bar had only been open for about 18 months when, the pandemic, March of 2020 hit, and we had to shut down our dining room because of city ordinance would only allow 10 people in your business. And so at that point, it wasn't worth staying open. COVID was actually, gosh, I hate to even say it out loud. It was one of the best things that happened to us, only because it made us kind of reassess and go, okay, how are we going to get through this? And at the time, we didn't know it was going to be 8 weeks of shutting down the dining room. At the time, it was, when are we going to reopen? Are we ever going to reopen? And so we just did everything we could to really stay in business. And so we moved to a completely to-go menu. And because of that, we added more items to the menu naturally, organically, that that made sense. And so I said, well, let's make pasta, because pasta does well in a to-go container. It's easy to heat up, the next day if they want it. And so we created, 4 pastas, and they sold. And people were like, we want more of this. People would order pans of lasagna to go. They ordered cases of wine, gift cards, or whatever they could. I really have to thank Sioux Falls as a community is so supportive. So many people would come in and verbalize to me and say, we're here right now because we want you to be here when this thing is over. And I think that's Sioux Falls in a nutshell. They go out and support independent businesses and small businesses because they want them to be around for a long time.
Just 2 more questions, real fast. What was it like for you on opening night when Marabella opened?
Marabella, yeah. Well, so to go back to your previous question, so we made it through COVID, and really because we rebounded so quickly after COVID, in my mind, I always thought, we could open a second location someday, but the opportunity to go into Washington Square was just too good to pass up. And it was one of those spaces. It was just completely vacant. And when I walked through the front door, I saw it. I'm like, the bar's going to go over there, the kitchen, walk in, the booths. I could see it all. And so we had to do it. And it took a little convincing. But my wife, she's the one that keeps it real for me, keeps me grounded, asks the tough questions of me. And so then we signed the contract and got the construction done. So opening night was very surreal for us to see something that we had seen only in drawings, to draw the ceilings and the architecture that we wanted, the fabric of the booths, the mural on the back wall of Florence. All of it just came together so seamlessly and perfectly for us that we're over the moon. And it's a busy restaurant, which we love, because one of the worries that, when you open another location, and a lot of people know us now because our wine bar had been open for 4 years before we opened Marabella. And the worry is, well, are we just going to take some of our clientele from our wine bar and just move them over to Marabella and have 2 half-full restaurants? And that's not the objective. The objective is to keep our wine bar busy and create this new destination, which is why we designed Marabella very intentionally to feel and look very different than our wine bar. Our wine bar is a little more casual. Marabella is a little more upscale. Both have phenomenal menus. Both have phenomenal people that give phenomenal service. Great wine lists at both. And then Brick's Wine Bar was one of those things that, again, just happened because space came available, and we said, well, let's open another wine bar. And it's 2 doors down from Marabella. So now you can order from the Marabella menu at Brick's, which is just an added bonus.
So last thing, how do people find these places? What's the easiest way?
Easiest way is social media. We have 4 businesses. And they all have websites as well. But our Wine Bar and Kitchen, you can find that on Facebook and Instagram, or just ourwinebar.com. Brick's Wine Bar is brickswine.bar, or you can look up Brick's Wine Bar on social media. Then we have Marabella Ristorante, which the website is ciaomarabella.com. So it's CIAO, like hi Marabella, or on social media. And then our last business that we haven't talked about is Vespa Catering. So if you go to vespacatering.com.
I didn't even know you have this.
Wow. We have a catering company, and we've been doing weddings. We're doing large events, office events, chamber mix, you name it. So now we're taking what we do well in-house and bringing it to you.
Wow. What just so inspiring. Any last words?
Oh, sorry, I'm reading when did we spend the last time? Well, that's nice. Who's Sarah Stowers? That's very nice.
Sarah's an amazing person, a botanist and a yoga teacher.
Oh, very nice. Honestly, I don't I'm just like for you to say that I'm inspirational, like makes me feel uncomfortable, only because I don't see myself that way. I just am who I am. If you see me at the restaurant, you almost always see me there with my wife and the kids, and then we have my wife's sister works at Marabella. Our niece works there. We have two cousins. Our nephew, like I said, runs Brick's Wine Bar. We've got kids in the kitchen, kids out front. But I think that really, like our guests love that. They say it all the time. They're like, we love when we see your family here, because it truly is something you don't see at a lot of other restaurants.
Thank you so much for being on the show, and it's just phenomenal to hear all this and to know that your family is so involved on so many levels. It's truly amazing.
Well, thank you.
And thank you for all the good food.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Oh gosh, I just I love. I mean, if you've listened to this before, I love interviewing people, and I love being surprised by people. I've known Riccardo for 20 years, and there's so much, almost everything of what he said I didn't know, and so there's no reason, absolutely no reason to take the. I mean, it's tempting to think we know the people around us and and just assume, but let's be asking questions. Let's be celebrating. Let's be engaging in conversation, because the people around us are amazing, and we ourselves are amazing. So let's just share and enjoy good food. Well, anyway, thanks so much for tuning in, whether live or on replay. Next week, keeping it local, Brian White's going to talk about another wonderful local establishments that he's created, including Carpenter Bar. So please tune in next week. Until then, the outro. Hey, make it a wonderful week. Smile. I'm telling myself to smile. You don't need to smile.